In this video, I'm going to talk about chainstay yokes. These are popular on modern mountain bikes. What are they? Why do we even have them? And then after I get through that, I'm going to weld this baby together. Let's get into it. So let me show you these so you know what I'm talking about. These are the same. They're a mirror image of each other. It's a piece of steel that is machined in two operations on a CNC mill, and it's kind of a clamshell shape. It's mostly hollow. You have these screws here just that are for holding the piece while you're machining it. And what it is you weld it together, and it becomes a sub-assembly. It becomes part of the bike frame. So the problem that these seek to solve. This here is like an all-road bike, a cross bike or something, but they're popular on mountain bikes especially. The problem it seeks to solve is if you have a fat-ass tire in here, like a 2.6 mountain bike tire or something, and then you want to have short chainstays on your frame because you want that aggressive rear end, real short, and then if you also inevitably have a chainring out here for your crankset, you're going to have a pinch point here between your tire and between the chainring. And so that's an issue on most bikes. It's a consideration on most bikes. You really want to get the chainstay in the right spot. Even on this one, I did some like dimpling, right? This is not particularly elegant. But anyway, as you get into the modern aggressive hardtail mountain bike, especially, but also other bikes, that really is a pinch point. And so you don't want to flatten the tube completely, even if you have smooth dies to smoosh it a little bit. You don't want to flatten it completely because with no cross section on that axis, it's not going to be stiff, and if you smush it a lot, depending on how you do it, you could probably compromise the strength of it, and so it becomes an issue. Some people will weld in a solid piece of plate there, and there's different ways to do it, but this is one of the options that you have, right? And so you would design this on the computer, and then you would machine it, and it's, the tool paths on here are pretty sophisticated. It's a lot of motion with the CNC mill back and forth. You have these subtle little terrace tool paths on here as it makes these little steps up the side. It's usually finer on the outside and a little bit rougher on the inside, right? And then because the inside is not a finished surface, it doesn't need to look as pretty. And then it gets welded together, and then you miter along here so that it fits against your bottom bracket shell. And then depending on how it's designed, you would have tubes coming from the dropout to here. Your chainstays would come only up to about here, and they would meet on to they would mate up with this part of the chainstay yoke. So I picked up these Chamba-Wambas from Lichen Precision, and it was a joint venture, I believe, between Lichen Precision and Quiver Designworks. And so, the design is so critical to something like this, because if you're going to go to the trouble of replacing this section of tube with a CNC machined piece, I better put the material in the right spot so that you can fit the chainring you want and fit the tire you want. Otherwise, you just spent a lot of money on something that didn't even help you, right? So the design on something like this is really critical. And from what I can tell so far, it looks really sharp, and I'm excited to see, not only how I can fit it into the frame that I'm going to build, and then, I'm curious to see how it welds up and all these things. I've never built with one of these before, and I'm going to have a lot of fun playing with this for the first time. So I imagine there's some residue, some trace of machining, coolant or oil or something on this. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't want to weld that into this, so I'm just going to give it a spritz with Simple Green here. I think this is a 1-to-1 solution. So I'll just, clean it off, wipe it off, and then get welding. So I've never welded one of these up before, and I don't really have a whole lot of thought put into what the best way is to do that, so I'm just winging it here. But my table is, kind of flat, and there's a flat here and here, so I'm going to use those as datums, and then I'm using my fingers here to kind of feel the seam and try and get the thing lined up along the seam. I'm just going to fusion tack it together a couple places, and then start welding it out, I think. quite a bit of weld to do along the length of this. There's nothing quite like the satisfaction of burning rod. Don't know how I want to orient it. I don't really like this. It looks like it's way up in the air here. It's like the Clooney movie. It's so awkward being like suspended up in the air like this. So I got this little mamma jamma stitched up here, and you know, I've mostly welded bicycle tubing in the context of, you know, bike joints on the bicycle, and every different kind of thing that you weld has different characteristics. You know, this is thicker in some spots and thinner in other spots. You know, right there is two thin sections, but then you can see in the middle there's the little boss there where it gets screwed together, the fixturing for where it's made. And so, you know, as you're welding around, parts of it require more heat and less heat, and you can't always tell that from the outside. And so, you know, I'm learning a little bit as I do this, and I think if I had to do 5 or 10 of these, you know, the 5th or 10th one would be looking pretty nice. I'm not super proud of this, but it's fine. I think functionally it'll be fine, and it looks decent. So, you know, kind of a learning experience figuring out a new part and how I want to weld it. Another consideration is, you know, how to make yourself comfortable at the table as you're welding it so you can do your best work. I had these little magnets and aluminum blocks, and that helps to kind of prop yourself around. I think if I had something like a Panavise, you know, an adjustable swivel ball vise thing could help for something like this, maybe to get your best position welding around it, but certainly I was doing fine like this. Yeah, it just always feels nice, you know, to get the stuff tacked together and then flip the hood down and just start welding it out. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this. Anyway, subscribe to see more of these TIG videos and to follow along with the mountain bike build series.